Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Superman Year 1000 Issue 1, written by Joshua Williamson with art by Eddie Barrows and Yasmin Putri, with colours by Adriano Lucas and letters by Ariana Maher. Superman's return from the edge of time is fully revealed this issue as in Metropolis, Lois wakes to find Clark typing away a story on the sofa, something that surprises her since he's not done a lot of typing in a long while. Lois thinks that this is about what Time Trapper told Clark about how he'll watch Lois grow old and die along with everyone he loves. But Clark thought that he already had come to terms with his Kryptonian heritage, allowing him to live longer. But he doesn't think it's going to be forever, and he cannot imagine a future without Lois. Lois doesn't want him to worry about that since there is still time, but Clark says the future is already there. Lois awakens from her dream, finding that she's been sleepwalking again and Clark isn't actually really back. I'm glad we aren't just jumping into Clark being back, because in Action Comics issue 1100 we saw him be saved from the end of eternity and taken into the present, and I figured that this is where that story was picking up from, but I kind of like that we haven't gotten there just yet, and I don't think we actually will until somewhere inside of the Kingdom of Zod event where he'll have this big grand return to fight Zod at some point in the story. And I do enjoy Williamson bringing back some of his hanging plot threads though, like what Time Trapper told Superman about how he's going to live forever, and it appears to be something Williamson is going to cover in his Superman ongoing more or less after this event, and obviously he's going to be covering it a bit here. And it was always something that I thought was really interesting, that live forever line, just because I don't think Trapper meant it literally. That was when Trapper was kind of being a villain to Superman. I always took that line as more that, like, he will probably outlive Lois because of his Kryptonian heritage, but I feel it was more of a sort of symbolic live on, where like, oh, his influence is going to live on. And we see that with like the Legion and various other heroes who in the future become inspired by Superman. And I think that's what Trapper actually meant. He's going to live forever in the minds of all of these people he's inspired. Across space and time, Superman, still empowered with the Alpha and Omega energies, finishes undoing all of the damage Darkseid did to the universe in the past and present, feeling a peace he has never known before, but it's short-lived as something begins pulling him, something like a calling. The god Superman takes off into the time stream where he's immediately grabbed by something, smashing down hard on the hull of a boat, currently being piloted by Matthew Tyler, the Hourman, who tells Superman that they are in for a bumpy ride. The Hourman making an appearance, the Hourman being from the Justice Legion Alpha, the Justice League 1 million team, making an appearance here was not on my bingo card. That's a very neat pull on Williamson's part, and I like that they're making it known that the stuff that they did in the stuff we saw with Time Trapper, how we saw his Legion actually get killed, and I like that he's kind of bridging the gap there, where it's like, oh, Hourman actually managed to survive and escape into the timeline, and now he's going to team up with Superman. Like, that's awesome. I love that. Getting to experience some of Superman's adventures while he's still a god is pretty fun too. I think it's definitely something a lot of people wanted to see, and I'm really intrigued to see what he's going to do with these powers and how he ends up back as just plain old Superman that we saw at the end of Action Comics issue 1100. Superman recognizes Owlman, but knows that he and the Justice Legion Alpha were destroyed by Darkseid's Absolute Legion. Something Owlman knows is true, but he managed to escape, and he sailed to this point in time to see if time had corrected itself after Darkseid died, but it appeared the damage turned a normally raging ocean into a deadly hurricane. Superman wants to try and fix this problem, but Owlman reveals that Time Trapper is usually the one to deal with this, but he's gone, and in his absence, something has taken his place. A being who can manipulate and is currently feeding on the destruction caused by Darkseid. Owlman is currently on the run from this being as it's been trying to erase him from existence, and he tries to tell Superman that the timeline is a living, breathing thing, and it grows and changes, but Darkseid's influence is an infection, and if it's not healed in time, it will die. Superman wants to cut the infection out with what little King Omega energy and Trapper power he has left, and Owlman warns him that if he does use these powers, it will become entangled in the time's current, which is where we found him at the end of Action Comics issue 1100. Superman tells Owlman that he has corrected the past and present, so he must correct the future, and everything everything Darkseid has broken. But Owlman fears he's going to get lost in himself and his memories, and to survive he'll have to go beyond all understanding of time, and if he fails, he'll never get to go home. Superman understands the risks, flying off without a hesitation to finish his mission. So this is really fixing something I thought was lacking at the end of DCKO, which was Clark's role as the God was a little unclear. Yeah, he fixed the Earth, but that's really all we got. We don't really got to see the nuts and bolts of that. And I like that this series is showing us that, showing us how he did it. Williamson is expanding that here with Superman looking to fix every point in time, both past, present, and future, which makes a little bit more sense than just fixing what Darkseid did in the current day Earth. Superman speeds through time and not changing anything but merely removing Darkseid's influence, allowing time to heal itself in the process. Doing so though makes time blur together for the Man of Steel, and he becomes lost in time as Time Trapper's powers take him to the 31st century, and to a metropolis where the Absolute Legion fought a war in. Superman hears Lois calling to him, finding her down in the rubble, reminding him not to forget about her or their time together. Clark knows that he would never forget her, but Lois fades away, telling Clark that forever was something they could never have. Clark's own memories of running out of time with Lois being a grounding rod here, the thing that reminds him of where he is and who he is cool. It's a really cool use for that power, since it's something that's very sad to think about, losing time with your loved ones. But the way it's being used here is kind of to gird his hope. It's kind of giving Superman that sort of push to come back to the present and actually come back for Lois. I quite like that. Clark soon finds an encampment amongst the buildings and finds a scared Saturn girl who isn't her absolute counterpart anymore. She's just normal Imra now and doesn't want to fight, since a lot has happened since her time as the Absolute Legion's leader. Like now she has children with Lightning Lad. Imra knows that they aren't the Legion Superman knew, but they aren't the Legion he fought. Clark asks how they are there, and Lightning Lad appears, revealing that after the tournament they were disconnected from Darkseid's power and that they no longer fell under his control. So they came to this time period to seek refuge, and the rest of the Legion who survived were all taken. Clark is pretty angry with these guys since, yeah, they were murderers and people who hurt a lot of his friends, so why should he believe them? Him being mad at these guys is great since, yeah, they murdered a lot of people. I'm glad their story isn't just reverting to heroic Legion members either because Superman is fixing the timeline. I like that these guys, these evil ones, are sticking around and looks to be sticking around trying to make amends. Garth shows Superman the new Legion HQ they are building amongst the rubble, hoping that they can create a new life for themselves, but they know they can't hide forever. The ground suddenly shakes and cracks apart as the timeline begins coming apart. Cosmic Boy knows this time was coming for them all, as the timeline is righting itself and erasing them so the Legion of superheroes they destroyed can come back in their place. Superman knows that he has to send them back, but the Legion plead for him not to let them go back to Darkseid. Imra resigns herself to her fate, knowing that this is their punishment for what they have done. Clark mournfully tells her that if he doesn't put things back, he cannot finish healing the timeline, but he also wants to try and save everyone, them included. This is a great Superman moment. The villains want to reform and Superman wants to give them that chance to. Even if the literal timeline wants to try and stop him, he's going to find a chance to help these people and want them to do better. That's like such a core Superman thing, and it's also a core foundation of the Legion, following on from Superboy and then Superman, and following what he instilled in others and what he inspired in others. Imra points out that to help them, Superman has to fight him, pointing to the arrival of the Infinite Man, an old enemy from the past legions. Imra reveals that Time Trapper always held the villain at bay, but thanks to Trapper being killed, he is now free and has been erasing time forever, all because he hates the Legion of Superheroes. Infinite Man coming back in the big 2026 is fantastic. He was a Legion villain of the original Legion way back in the 60s and 70s, and I'm guessing Williamson has plans to use him in his own Legion book at some point, since he's bringing him back here and he'll no doubt find his way back in some point in his own Legion book. Superman believes that this is what Owlman saw in the time storm and what's stopping time itself from healing. He refuses to let this villain win, speeding off to confront Infinite Man despite Imra's warnings that Infinite Man could erase him forever. Superman tells Imra that the Legion was taken from him and that he will use his powers to erase this moment moment, but he refuses to let the Absolute Legion be erased no matter what they did. Imra wants to help Superman, but Superman knows that only he can do this since he was given these powers for a reason. Superman grows in size to meet Infinite Man head on, and the villain claims that he cannot do anything to stop him since this moment should be erased and the Legion along with it. Chains begin wrapping around Superman as Infinite Man reveals that with Time Trapper gone, the timeline has chosen Superman to become the new Time Trapper, something Owlman warned Clark about. Infinite Man gets ready to kill the Legion and their broken timeline, but Superman decides that he's not going to let this predetermined role define him. He outrightly rejects his role as the new Time Trapper, knowing that it might mean he cannot return home. Doing so allows Superman to unleash all of the leftover King Omega and Time Trapper power onto Infinite Man, telling the villain that all legions will live. This is really the ultimate sacrifice. Superman gave up all his power to ensure that this legion would survive because that's what Superman does. He helps people who ask for his help, and this Legion wanted his help and wanted a change. Superman wasn't going to let them just die off. Infinite Man is blown away into the time stream as the timeline begins to heal itself completely, and Imra finds that her and the others all survived thanks to Superman, who now free from the King Omega power is left back at the end of time as just plain old Superman. Clark speeds through time, finding every version of the Legion lived, but becomes lost in the various versions of them as he reaches the void at the end of time. He tries to escape from it, but is pulled back towards it as he remembers Trapper telling him that he would live on forever, and Owlman says that he would lose himself in his memories in time. But Superman refuses to forget Lois and John and Kara and Connor and all his friends and family, using their memories to give himself strength as he pushes away from the void. I love this connecting up with Action Comics issue 1100, getting to see it all from Superman's perspective, and then, we dump him here at the end of time where that book picks up the story with Superboy saving him. Is fantastic, and I just love getting to see all of the legions live now as well. That's really interesting, and it also explains why we saw some stuff in Action Comics that looked a bit strange, just because all the legions are alive. Every single version that has ever existed is alive now, which is a really big thing. I'm intrigued to see what they're going to do with that, because that's like two things inhabiting the same spot in the timeline at the same time, probably going to cause some problems, but I'm intrigued to see how that actually works out. I'm sure Williamson is going to explore it in his Legion book. At that very moment, Booster Gold and his team's time bubble arrives, spotting Superman. Superman knows that he has been obsessed with the future ever since Time Trapper told him that he would live forever, so much so that he forgot to live in the moment. Luckily, Superboy brings him back to the moment as the young Clark Kent grabs his older self, pulling him from the clutches of oblivion. After seeing what Superman's adventure was to get here, having Superboy save him has so much more weight to it, since now Superboy is also responsible for the Legion being reborn and living on, thus keeping his own future role in their story intact, because again, that's probably something Williamson's going to cover, them meeting Superboy for the first time, taking him to the future for an adventure. Back in the future timeline, Imra and Garth look over their two baby children, with Garth wanting to teach them how to blow up things with their powers. Imra worries that they aren't safe there since it's been weeks since Superman was there, but Garth believes that they were okay since he believes in Superman. Owlman arrives, telling them that they should believe in Superman, but his sacrifice did more than he expected, and it didn't just restore this moment in the future, it restored all of them. Like I said before, this is also why in Action Comics 1100, when Superboy saw the Legion in his timeline, they were distorted and made up of various versions of themselves. It's because there are multiple legions that exist at the same point in time now. It'd be pretty wild if that's what the Legion book is going to be. It's not just going to be one particular legion, it's going to be many. It's going to be a legion of legions, if you will, all joining forces, and that's got to happen. Like, that makes sense where that would go, where you have all these different iterations of the Legion from throughout history all joining together to face a big unseen threat. It just kind of writes itself, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing multiple Saturn girls and Lightning lads and Matter Eater lads running around. It could lead to some interesting adventures. Owlman's chronovision allows him to see all the various versions of the Legion, telling the heroes that all the legions are possible now. He can't wait to go home and see the Justice Legion Alpha and celebrate Superman's heroic acts, but he might have spoken too soon as a giant space shuttle comes crashing down onto the city. Owlman finds it fascinating that a spacecraft crashed to Earth. This very much feels like history repeating itself to him. Cosmic Boy rushes to open it, but when he does, he's attacked by Brainiac drones who swarm out of the ship after locating the Legion. The heroes fight back as a giant shield is placed around them, preventing Owlman from getting back to his ship so he can enter the timeline and warn Superman. The shield seals around them and the Legion is bottled up by Brainiac 1,000,000, who proclaims that the Legion is no longer lost. He tells Pandora to let her master know that he has found his former minions, and Pandora is pleased, knowing Darkseid will be as well. So Pandora showing up was not something I expected at all. I cannot believe that someone actually remembered her as a character. It's very intriguing plot development. Since last we saw her, she was obliterated by Dr. Manhattan. We kind of saw her briefly at the end of DCKO issue 5, but man, I didn't think she'd be directly tied to the upcoming Legion book, as well as Darkseid's next plan, which looks to be a crisis level event. Brainiac 1,000,000 adds the bottled future to his library, telling Pandora that he knows that she has great power, enough to manipulate whole timelines and merge them together, yet she is serving Darkseid. Pandora will only say that she is a harbinger of what is to come, and while Darkseid continues his war in the multiverse, she was sent to Earth's timeline to gather allies for his return. She knows that he will attack soon and everything will be Darkseid again, but Brainiac wants her to remind Darkseid that the future belongs to him. Now this is some really early setup to the crisis on Absolute Earths Darkseid is teeing up for since the end of DCKO issue 5. So I'm guessing that's happening within the next year or so, which is exciting. I know these big events aren't everyone's cup of tea, but I really enjoy them, and I really enjoy the build up, the anticipation, and just like seeing how like the writers structure it all and sort of like put all these little elements that when put together make up this grand, chessboard of ideas that they have for this event. It's always really fun seeing that sort of stuff and just kind of live for that sort of stuff. It's always great. Pandora soon disappears, telling Brainiac that he will be left alone with his Legion. Brainiac, however, knows that Pandora is a fool since no one can control him, since for a millennia he has obsessed with finding one piece of knowledge that has always eluded him, and now it is within his grasp, as no future is left for the last son of Krypton, and his legacy will be Brainiac's to control, and no one will be inspired by Superman ever again. He looks over the various legions he's bottled, knowing that he can weaponize them against Superman and Darkseid, which is very interesting, which makes Brainiac a third party to this big event against both Superman and Darkseid. I do wonder if Superman setting up the Legion though will have some sort of ramifications for this Brainiac, because obviously we have Brainiac 5 and he's a descendant of a long line of Brainiacs, and I have to imagine Brainiac 1,000,000 is a descendant of him at some point. So maybe there's some sort of effect that could happen where Superman still manages to actually go ahead with his plan on re-establishing the Legion, and it changes this Brainiac. There's some real weird time travel stuff that could happen here with this guy, and I'm really looking forward to it. I also really like that Brainiac is now getting ready for a big crossover event, big crossover crisis event that looks like it might probably come out around the same time Man of Tomorrow comes out. So it's going to be the summer of Brainiac next year, I think. Brainiac looks over a hologram of Earth, and knowing thanks to Superman's actions, a new future has formed, one without superheroes or a Legion. This is the one that the Absolute Legion inhabit now, and Brainiac has brought someone in to ensure this new Legion is never forged on this world. The being is revealed to be the Cyborg Superman, who intends to become the inspiration for a future Legion. Now this is a very big change. Cyborg Superman taking Superman's place as the inspiration for the Legion. That's a genius idea, and I'm surprised it has not been done before. I wonder if he'll fully disguise himself as Superman again and try and fool the Legion, a la he did during the reign of the Superman for a very short period of time when everyone thought he was actually Superman. I'm excited for the Legion book, but I'm even more excited now since it seems to be building up to this all-in saga phase 2 crisis level event. Kind of makes it required reading too, since Williamson along with Scott Snyder are going to be the architects behind all of this. So I'm very much looking forward to that Legion book and what they have in store for us in that, since it's just kind of bumped all the way up to the top of my list now, and I cannot wait for it. Superman Year 1000 Issue 1 really filled out Superman's story post DCKO and connected up to a lot of what was going on over in Action Comics issue 1100, as well as the upcoming Legion book. Williamson really did a great job diving into Clark's worry about time and not having enough of it with Lois, using that to really push his story forward about not just saving a legion of superheroes, but all legions in a really crazy direction that directly builds into what is becoming the massive dark side fronted crisis event of 2027. I'm really surprised we're still building towards that so early, but I'm really looking forward to it. It's got me really excited, especially the developments that went through in this issue with Cyborg Superman, Pandora showing up, all these crazy things happening in this book and stuff that I never thought Williamson would be able to do in a million years, but very much looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to his Legion book as well, which has become kind of required reading now if you want to catch up on what's been going on in the All-In saga, especially in Phase 2. So definitely check that out when it comes out. I cannot wait for it. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10.